Hi everybody. So glad that you're here today. Thank you so much for joining. We are going to be talking today about your M365 maturity. Super excited about this topic. You might see Elantis be doing these webinars a couple times throughout the year because we believe so much in their value. They really do impact organizations of all different sizes and all different team sizes. So you're going to hear a lot about the differences through organizations with our team members today. Some key things that you're going to learn and we're focused on is maturity levels. We're going to talk about assessment techniques, optimization or opportunities, and road mapping. All the things that we find are really, really important and really do set a strong foundational and basically an understanding of your current environment, which is just, again, something that we find very valuable for all of our clients and have tons of different levels and stories of success that we're going to share with you today. The team that we're going to work with today, I both love and adore working with both of them. We have Will and Julian. Will is on my team and Julian is an enterprise architect for our company. Both of them have a lot of experience in working with different clients in different organizations. And so they're going to each give a different lens to what M365s can do. Julian has over 20 years experience on the technical side. So we're going to really have him deep dive into some of the use cases and the different features of M365. And Will has had a ton of experience working with clients like yourself to show the value. So he's also going to give some different perspective on what M365 can do for you. Okay, so Will, let's start with you. Why don't you just give us an overview of, what does M365 mean for an organization? Let's just create a standard language there.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. Microsoft 365 maturity, it refers to how effectively an organization is leveraging the tools and features within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem to really meet their needs and their business goals. It's not about just adopting the technology, but how they're using it strategically to improve collaboration, streamline their processes, enhance their security, and support compliance. A mature organization moves beyond basic usage like email and file storage and integrates more of the tools like Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Viva, the Power Platform, Purview, and now, yes, even Copilot, even though it is fairly new, to create a more connected, efficient, and secure digital workspace. It's about aligning the technology with your business outcomes to really drive the real value for your organization.
I love that. So many different organizations, they implement M365, but they don't actually develop it. So in order to understand more about the maturity, what happens when an organization doesn't reach that level of maturity and doesn't look to grow their M365 environment?
That's really a great question. When organizations don't achieve that higher level of Microsoft 365 maturity, they can face several challenges. First one really is costs often arise as they invest in third-party tools to fill the gaps that Microsoft 365 already can cover, which really leads to redundant spending. By consolidating your IT solutions within Microsoft 365, you can reduce your licensing costs by more than 60% per user compared to relying on disconnected systems. Additionally, fully optimizing the platform can save up to 40% in operational costs by eliminating those tools. Security risks also grow when controls are inconsistent, leaving sensitive data exposed and creating compliance gaps. Organizations that are underutilizing features like advanced threat protection and data loss protection miss the key opportunities to safeguard their information and really are putting themselves at risk. And finally, productivity is another big area that suffers. Disconnected workflows can lead to low adoption rates, and a reliance on unauthorized tools can really create those inefficiencies, slow down the company's collaboration, and ultimately frustrate their employees. When businesses are addressing these gaps, you can look to unlock the Microsoft platform's full potential and achieve significant financial savings and ultimately have a more productive workforce.
So I think one of a good idea at this point is to potentially give an example. I think being able to show how it impacts finances, how it impacts productivity is a really important part of this, especially when we're talking to the business, understanding how the business priorities align with our IT teams in this assessment. What is an example that you could provide?
Yeah, I can think of one off the top of my head that really focuses on that financial impact I was mentioning. We're working currently with a municipal client here in BC to really help them optimize their investment in Microsoft 365. The example I'm going to choose to use is that they've been using OpenText eDocs as their records management platform for alongside their M365 environment. OpenText eDocs is a legacy platform. It's an on-prem platform. It's one that it is great for some municipalities, but it also doesn't allow for the collaboration for people to use. The other thing is many of the features that they're relying for in eDocs, like document storage, version control, and compliance tracking, are already available in Microsoft 365 as well through SharePoint and Purview. eDocs also isn't allowing them further to use multi-user collaboration on working files without the files being checked in and checked out, which is something that they were really causing business problems for them, just for the delays of the document being worked on, checked back in, having to be checked back out, going from there. It didn't allow team members to work on it all at the same time. So really where we're going with this is that the overlap for them came at a very steep cost. The municipality was spending over 6 figures annually on licensing and support for eDocs, on top of their already Microsoft 365 investment in their licensing. So by helping them transition their records management processes to SharePoint and Purview and optimizing their use of M365, they're working now to eliminate this redundancy and dramatically reduce the cost of their tech stack spend. Their savings here will be reinvested into future improvements for the organization, such as automation and enhanced citizen services, also allowing them to maximize the value of their investment within the ecosystem while driving forward longer-term enhancements for the organization.
That's such a good example. And I feel like that's one of the ones we've done often. And we have some other client stories, but totally relevant, makes a ton of sense. Jillian, you were one of the tech leads on some of these projects. Do you have anything that you would add from like more of a technical perspective on things that our audience should be aware of?
Oh, Jules, I think you're muted still.
It's been 0 days since we've had a muting incident. You know, what's really interesting to me is that response, right? When we consider time wasted on manual processes, if you have a paper-based process as an example, you know, you may digitize that process, but it's just a digitized process. It's not necessarily a true automation process. So that's something to be cognizant of when we're doing these maturity assessments. We're not just looking at the digitization of a paper-based process. We're also looking at the art of the possible with current technology. So when we look at time wasted on manual and digitized processes for some of these organizations, I'm going to use a regional health insurance provider as an example. You know, they had limited automation, but that means employees are spending more time on repetitive tasks, such as document approval workflows and data entry. So this regional health insurance provider, they're undergoing a digital transformation to streamline health claims processing. You know, currently the organization operates with some automation, as mentioned. However, there are some inefficiencies in key areas like their claims approvals and data entry. So we took a look at what their document approval workflows look like, with health claims being submitted by members, either via email or paper forms. These were manually reviewed by claims processors. There was some RPA capabilities, robotic processing automation capabilities, and that review involved the verification of supporting documents, checking claim amounts against policy limits, routing claims for approvals, those sort of things. Claims are often routed through basically email chains with either a physical approval folder, which can get delayed, that can, you know, based on staff absences or incomplete information, you end up in this cycle of approval because you have incomplete data. And then managers and team supervisors were basically manually reviewing to gain sign-off on these claims. That often required clarification emails or meetings to resolve discrepancies. So from some insights and looking at their challenges, we basically identified there were delays. A single claim approval could take, you know, multiple days, 2 to 3 days, due to the back and forth for communications. There was often data entry problems because manual entry of a claim with the details that are required in the back end, that often introduced errors leading to rework. And finally, my favorite, which is employee burnout. When you look at how these claims were being processed, you know, processors are spending a significant amount of time on a repetitive task like cross-referencing a policy instead of actually handling the exception or providing exceptional customer service. So that current process, as mentioned, the claims details, collecting member information, the provider data, treatment codes, all of that was manually entered into the claims management system. And then after reviewing, they may be scanned, uploaded documents as well, with employees spending hours transcribing information from claim forms, which basically increased the probability of risk errors. So we took a look at what that challenge was. It's very time intensive, a lot of manual data entry, 15 to 20 minutes per claim. That resulted in bottlenecks, not able to meet SLAs, et cetera, especially during peak season. When you consider the season that we're in now, flu season's upon us. There's going to be a lot of people that are basically looking to post their claims. So, inefficiencies were basically highlighted due to the number of high touch points and processes that prevented the teams from being able to scale that operation without hiring additional staff. Those costly errors, those input errors, which lead to incorrect entries, they were delaying payments to their customers as well, which led to a level of frustration, right? Like, hey, I've submitted my claim. How comes I haven't been reimbursed just yet? So we recommended a number of approaches to address these inefficiencies using a workflow tool. We drove some digital transformation that really focused, again, not on the digitization of the automation process, but the art of the possible around that with regard to the integration of workflow with that health claims process. So our proposed solution basically automated the claims approval workflow. That workflow tool created an end-to-end claims approval process that automated document routing and the verification for that. Claims were submitted, automatically routed to the correct team for the claims processes to handle based on predefined business rules, such as the policy type, the claim amount. Obviously, different levels of insurance are going to facilitate and enable a different policy type. We integrated that with some optical character recognition tools as well, OCR, because some people are still using paper-based, but we've got that digitized instance of the form. And then we were validating that against the extraction in order for them to see those uploaded receipts. Their approvals are streamlined through dynamic workflows that allows managers to approve and reject the claims directly, either within a team channel or with email, auto-generated summary reports. The benefits of that output, basically approval times were reduced from 2 to 3 days to just a few hours. We also reduced that need for the back and forth communication as the system ensured that all required information is collected up front. We also provided greater transparency with automated notifications and tracking. Now, with that in mind, everybody wants to lean towards workflow and the integration with AI. Now, some of the opportunities for improvement, as I call them, OFIs, is the ability to use AI to extract and validate that data from scanned or uploaded documents, your medical receipts that are associated with the claim, the insurance forms, and we can basically validate that data through the utilization of machine learning. That can also auto-populate relevant fields into that claim management system using context. The power of context within the M365 ecosystem is arguably one of the most powerful capabilities that you'll see when you're in that entire stack. Now, the tactical benefits from that, data entry time per claim, 20 minutes to enter a claim, that was reduced to 5 minutes because of the power of context. I know who this user is. I already have their information. I don't have to do data duplication with that data entry. That also significantly reduced the number of errors because we're pre-populating the data in the form. The person entering the form doesn't necessarily need to know all that information. And we allowed the employees to focus on exception handling and providing that incredible customer service. So in short, the impact on time savings, claims approval workflow, that went down from 2 to 3 days to just 2 to 4 hours. That was an 80% increase in time saved per task. And then the data entry per claim, we took that down from 15 to 20 minutes to less than 5 minutes. There are instances where it's seconds, not minutes. And, we basically associated about a 75% time saved per task. So in short, the strategic benefits, improved customer service and improved customer experience that led to faster claim processing, improved their member satisfaction and loyalty. Now, the scalability around that, the system obviously needs to scale. We're talking about hundreds of claims per day, thousands of claims per day, dependent on peak time. So the scalability of that solution basically handled increased claim volumes without any additional staff headcount, which was able to provide significant cost saving and reduce those operational costs without the associated manual tasks for that. And of course, now because employees, the most critical from my perspective, happy employees, they can focus on meaningful work. No need to be, resolving disputes. They're actually looking to improve that process.
I love that. I want to take a minute, two things. One, I didn't say this at the beginning, so my mistake. If you guys have questions, because you're going to be listening to this and you're going through this and you're like, I have a manual process, or I want those cost savings, and you have questions, please enter them into the chat and we will get to them in the end. We don't want you to think of something and lose it. So please enter that in. But I love that. And the other thing, I feel like one of the things that when we do talk about assessments, people think, oh, I don't need that. Oh, it's M365. I know what that is. This is the stuff that they don't realize can happen. This is the stuff, the massive cost savings of this example, exactly what you said, the employees being able to, and I think this is really important. If you're a manager, or if you're leading a team, the staff, you said the headcount did not change. And it was the use of technology that you already have that you can put into use to create these benefits, these savings, and this value. So I love that. So many good things, so many takeaways. 80% per task. Is that right?
Per task.
Is that what I?
Yes.
Yes,
That's correct. Yeah.
That's amazing. I wrote that down myself. I'm going to use that. That's a really important stat, and it's what you can see in your own environment when you start with an assessment. So great. Let's move to stages of Microsoft M365 maturity. Let's lean into this part of the conversation a little bit. Jules, you kind of want to look through, like, for organizations, what they should be thinking about?
Yes, absolutely. And I kind of want to stage set here because we look at things from two perspectives, right? There's the Microsoft maturity model, but Elantis also has its own maturity model because we're not just dealing with the M365 ecosystem as well. So we leverage the Microsoft maturity model, but we also have our own maturity model as well, for areas where there is third-party integration as an example. So I'll start with the Microsoft maturity model, the M365 maturity model. It's a framework that's basically designed to help organizations assess, measure how effectively they're utilizing their M365 ecosystem. Its categorization is based on 5 simple stages, which is great. Right? We have basic, where organizations are just starting out. They're using M365 for very simple tasks, typical email, file storage. And then they may move to an intermediate stage where teams begin leveraging collaboration tools like Teams and SharePoint, but usage may still be inconsistent. And then there's advanced, which is where we meet a lot of our customers. They're just broaching that intermediate and they're moving into advanced, and things can start to get a little slippery. In advance, there's a broader adoption. You're looking to standardize your processes, you're looking at improved productivity, and you're recognizing and realizing that security features are being more actively used. My favorite stage is optimized. This is going from advanced to optimized. Like, that is not a gigantic leap because you've had the realization that there's a broader adoption. Microsoft describes this optimized layer as basically tools are starting to be integrated into your daily workflow. That means you're using the personal productivity platform as a way to reduce manual tasks. Now, whether that's for yourself or whether that's for part of your team. And then finally, transformative, which is where we're looking to take organizations. That's where organizations are unlocking the platform's full potential and they're achieving a really high efficiency. They're innovative, and they're taking a proactive approach to compliance. Now, advancing through these levels brings significant benefits. For example, collaboration. Collaboration can be tough, but with these tools, you can seamlessly work together in real time. Your operations also become more efficient with automation. You get better resource allocation if you cast your mind back to that example that I provided. And compliance. Compliance is enhanced with advanced security and governance tools. Now, that could be big G governance, little g governance, but we're looking to reduce risk and ensure that you've got the correct level of data protection. Now, the key, in my opinion, is to assess where you currently are. that's really what we're looking to do. And I have a lot of corny sayings, but if I ask you where I'm going to meet you and you give me the wrong address and I'm standing on the corner for 10, 15 minutes, um, it's a similar approach, right? We need to understand current state in order to identify what that future state is going to be. But in order to get your current state, you've got to give me we've got to get the correct address of where we're going to start.
I
And
love that.
that's where an M365 assessment basically is invaluable because it gives us that starting address location, and then we can figure out, hey, where's our destination from there? And that's prioritized based on the organization's unique requirements, right?
I love that. And one of the things that comes to mind as you're speaking is I'm sure most everybody wants to jump to transformative, right? Like no matter where
Yes.
they are, they're like, how do I get to transformative? And I'm also thinking, if you're like I love you said little g, big G governance, it doesn't mean you have to do everything at once. It doesn't mean you have to like move to transformative by rechanging all these things. You said that there are certain ways we can find the right address, get to the destination we need to next. So, what are some things that can help identify, like, assess their maturity, identify improvement? Like, what are some things that we want our audience to be
That's
thinking about?
that's a great question, Aaron. And I'm gonna drop one of my corny lines again. The most effective governance model is the one that operates seamlessly, so intuitive you don't even notice it's there. That whether that's big G governance, little G governance. To understand where an organization stands on the maturity model, we want to evaluate some key metrics. We want to reflect how well Microsoft 365 is being used. An easy metric for that is adoption, right? For example, we'll start with adoption, and that tells us if employees are fully embracing the tools. While productivity gains help us see if teams are working more efficiently, we use security benchmarks, on the other hand, to let us know if there are any gaps in compliance or risk management, especially as we move into, the days of AI. This compliance and risk management around your data is really highlighted. So we have a structured methodology for this, for how we conduct these assessments. First, we review how M365 tools are being used within the ecosystem and where those quick initiatives are to optimize. That might just be as simple as turning on some approval workflows with Power Automate or improving some document management within SharePoint. We focus on the overall strategy, but it's really about how do we identify some quick wins, whether that's today, tomorrow, next week, next month. And then the strategy is, hey, what are we doing this year, next year? So using our tools, we have specialized tools for this as well, to gather that data on things like collaboration, efficiency, current security posture. Once we have this information, we can then provide an actionable insight as to how we're going to approach the move up the maturity ladder. From there, we create a really important document. And I want to be clear around road mapping as well, right? Like there's a reason we use an ecosystem definition with various pillars, because you could have roadmaps that are aligned to a specific pillar, a specific service, or a specific feature within the ecosystem as well. And then you'll have an overarching roadmap, typically for your executives. Now, that roadmap can focus on boosting collaboration. It could be a focus on streamlining operations and improving compliance, whatever that is. The crux is the best part. We're here to help you prioritize where you want to start to achieve your quick wins, whether that be adoption, whether that be usage, automation of background processes, front office, back office, whether we're looking at automatic triggers for compliance, security-based, geofence, location-based access. Great example I have personally for Elantis is we actually have a different compliance rule for me when I'm in Canada versus when I'm back in the UK. I wasn't aware of that until I was back in the UK. So it's always wonderful to see those things in action and see those things working. Some things could be as simple as just looking at what the current naming conventions are around the organization. But at the end of the day, we're really there to highlight what those quick wins are and what the quick wins mean to that organization.
I love that so much. One of the things that I think we pay a lot of attention to is helping our technical teams align to the business. And I love what you said, like an overarching strategy is important so that we understand the different impact in different ways. And so I think that that's a really important call out. It's not just a standardized tool that we're just going to implement. This is the standardized tools that we actually help customize per our client. And then with each client, what are the business use cases, and then where are we going from there, so that the technical team is actually creating wins for the business. And I know that's often missed when we're talking straight technical, like our lens and your lens with your team is to say, I love that. What is the overall strategy? So it's an important piece for people who are like leaning into the technology also to have that higher level. So that was great.
Yeah, I think, Aaron, I think a good way to say that is like every organization is going from point A to point B, but there's just not one straight road to get there for everybody. Like every road is going to be different for every organization. Every roadmap is going to be different for every organization. But in the end, the goal is always to end up at point B.
I love that. It's so true. And now more than ever, probably trickier and more complicated, right?
Definitely.
With all your like here's all the different ways you could get from A to B. Let's make sure we're making the best decisions for your team and your organization. I love that. Let's do an example. Do you want to talk through a way to, to lean into the real estate example that we had talked about?
Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite examples that we have, and this was, we conducted this, I think last year, if memory serves. Considering we're at the end of the year almost as well, it's a little while ago. But this was one of my favorite engagements, just because of the outputs and the requirements that were there. Very straight-laced. This real estate management company, they completed an Elantis M365 maturity assessment. They were looking to evaluate what their current adoption and governance practices were across what I'll call the classic suite, the classic productivity suite, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, and the Power Platform. Now, our assessment highlighted areas where the organization was excelling, but we also identified critical gaps. So it's not just us coming in and saying, hey, you're not doing this right. We are highlighting areas that you are excelling in as well, and we're looking to leverage and build upon that. So after identifying where those critical gaps were, we basically looked at a significant enhancement to their operational efficiency, the security, and collaboration. That was highlighted out of our discovery approach. Our findings report basically emphasized a two-pronged approach for this organization for their digital transformation strategy. Bottom-up strategy to empower their users and streamline day-to-day operations, create buy-in at that lower level for the people that are actually executing those processes. And then a top-down strategy to align governance and adoption with that organization's strategic goals. That provided insight for us to focus into 5 key areas for them. Now, keep in mind, each organization may have different key areas. One of the reasons that I enjoyed this particular one is because of if you look at what's on the slide deck, these are 5 key areas: opportunities for improvement, OFIs. So our recommendation right out of the gate was, hey, let's get a solid governance framework in place for you. And that, in this instance, was actually a big G governance framework, because we looked to establish a governance center. We also started with standardization around naming and templates, leveraging things out of Entra, leveraging capability of Teams templates, SharePoint templates, those sort of things. And then we moved into that change management area. Change is the only constant. There's another corny saying from Julian. Now, our recommendations led into a comprehensive training program, which basically enabled us to build dedicated video, quick reference guides. These became key tools for specific roles within the organization, such as site owners, team leads, admins. But we also introduced a little bit of gamification around certification. And there was an incentivized learning for the various roles that I just mentioned. Couple that with the ADCAR change management model, we basically built some awareness and a desire for change. That was done through regular communication, newsletters, contests, win an iPad, those sort of things. that allowed us to address that resistance by showcasing success stories and highlighting what the clear benefits were at a user, a role, as well as a persona level as well, allowing us to promote what the key features of the M365 ecosystem relative to that specific organization. So from there, we were able to promote the key features out of the M365 ecosystem, and we highlighted underutilized features like Viva, managed metadata, data loss prevention capabilities, and those allowed us to drive and improve adoption, which was a major tracking KPI for that particular project, improving the adoption around the M365 environment. Then we looked at enhancing their collaboration tools. We did a revamp on Teams, made sure they got templates, redesigned their intranet. You know, we utilize card sorts, tree tests. It's really a fun type of workshop where we ideate with them and really highlight what it means to have that central location. We enabled Viva. We utilize that to centralize communication and drive that visibility back to what I call high value content that's contained in their SharePoint intranet. We also, an interesting part was their usage of Teams was actually really high, but they were using Teams like it was MSN Messenger or, you know, ICQ for those olden timey people amongst us. You know, basically it was there as a chat channel without really uncovering the benefit of that entire platform. So we trained users on the benefits of using structured communication in Teams to facilitate collaboration through channels. And what that did is, hey, I can find the context of what I'm currently working in without having to go through reams of chats, et cetera, et cetera. That was a big win for them. That intranet simplification as well, our transition from a previous, what I'll call intranet in a box, we transitioned them from an intranet, you know, out of a box. We fully believe that SharePoint Online has parity. And for faster load times, easier maintenance, we're now basically looking at SharePoint Online and its features out of the box and the capability that that brings. So we transitioned them back from, you know, a third-party solution into that M365 ecosystem, reducing licensing costs quite significantly, I'd say. And then we moved into, you know, something that's near and dear to my heart right now is the Power Platform and what it means around having strong governance, little g governance for the Power Platform. I will say there are a lot of moving pieces, but I say little g governance because we're solely focused on the Power Platform. There are other areas that we'll broach into that are larger G, but our recommendations out of that were threefold. Centralization of their environment. We wanted to limit environment creation. We wanted to make sure that there's a standard naming convention around those environments, so everybody understood. You know, this is dev, this is test, this is our production environment, and then associating the appropriate business units with those environments as well. Right, so it's not just, hey, I've got a standardized naming convention. It's I've got a standardized naming convention for my organization and the specific business units and the applications and solutions that will be associated with them. Nothing worse than going into your Power Apps platform and being, I've got 365 apps and I have no idea how to govern all these apps. Right, so that proliferation, great adoption, but poor governance. So with that in mind, we optimized their workflow governance, basically handling any errors that were occurring into a central location. Notification mechanisms were put in place if there are errors within that platform. And we did a solid catalog for their existing apps. We basically created an application catalog for them, which provided the ability to search that directory to reduce redundancy and improve accessibility. Reducing redundancy, co-sharing, hey, I built something amazing. Can I leverage your component out of that? Those sort of things. And then finally, you know, the really boring stuff, but it is critical. Security and compliance, right? So in this day and age, data is currency. Right, I think we can all agree on that. But we look to enforce some security best practices. We made sure that, you know, MFA for all admin accounts and users is there. We use service accounts for notifications, those sort of things, automated application of sensitivity labeling, the definition around DLP policies and what it means to protect sensitive data. And we also implemented a records management solution for them, defining and applying their retention labels based on a pre-existing file plan. We can do that for you as well, but it's always great when an organization comes to the table with a file plan. We can help you work through that. But they had a solid file plan. And then we basically automated that life cycle, for the compliance critical documents, because not all documents are necessarily going to be a candidate for record disclosure and for full maintenance. That helps us to address previously occurring security incidents as well, because we're able to monitor and remediate any risky sign-ins, as I'll say, phishing attempts, and that was all basically proliferated through Defender dashboards.
Yeah, no, I love that. And some key things I think that I really want to highlight that I loved, and we've talked about this before, that you mentioned was one, that people sometimes just bring in third party for teams. Like that is something we've seen a lot. And I love that you called that out, because Teams is not just like, Teams is meant to be a part of this ecosystem and be collaborative. And I love that, because I think that that's where some people bring in licensing costs. We've seen that over and over. So I love that. And same for the intranet. I think intranet is another third party thing where people bring in, they want this whole intranet project. And we've seen that through talking with some of our other clients, that SharePoint out of the box is a great option, and out of the box is like the best case scenario for so many reasons. So also wanted to call that out. And the third, absolutely, so many of our clients right now are talking about Power Platform. We are investing heavily into that in Atlantis, because we're seeing so many of our clients go that direction. So please reach out to us if Power Platform is your next step, because we are seeing it ourselves as a part of this M365. So many good points, Jules. Thanks so much. I'd love to, Will, I know that you also have had, so many different experiences working with clients, talking with clients around M365. If you could give a case study, and I also would love to understand just timelines, because these feel like probably really big projects and a lot of investment in time. And so as you go through your work case, as you go through your case study, I'd love to hear like duration and what our clients can also sort of digest from that perspective as well.
Yeah, for sure, Aaron. I know we're getting close to our time here, but so I'll keep it a little bit shorter. We do have a client that I guess they are a leader in the water park manufacturing industry. There's not a lot of those companies out there, so if you want to do some research to figure it out, feel free. But fun fact, both of them are in Canada. But they did come out to us back in 2020. That was our first real engagement with them. And they came to us with a critical question. Like, how can we modernize and streamline our operations to better support our growing business and our remote work environment? Remember, 2020, COVID was in full flight at that point. Everyone was working remotely. They had made taken those initial steps to migrate content into SharePoint Online. They'd adopted Teams and adopted Exchange Online so their people could work. But this was just the beginning for them, and they needed to really help unlock the potential for their entire ecosystem, which they hadn't taken advantage of. So we focused with them. We started with that M365 assessment to really understand their environment, their maturity level, and identify really the key areas of improvement they had and they needed. From the assessment, we quickly realized that they were on the lower level of the maturity scale, as we expected, based on knowing what they had told us ahead of time. But through that, we identified 4 foundational areas for improvement for their organization. The first was connecting their workforce, ensuring that their employees were able to collaborate and communicate effectively. The second was to centralize their data. They're a global organization with pods all over the world, and they had information scattered everywhere and redundant data within each place that not each team could see. The third was to strengthen their security and their governance around their data. And finally, the fourth was to automate processes for efficiency that would really streamline their workflows and allow their people to focus on their high value tasks. I know you asked for timelines, Aaron. So you imagine I said we started this with this client in 2020. We started this assessment in 2020. This client is now still working with us almost 5 years later. It'll be 5 years at the end of this month. And this wasn't an instant process to put all of this stuff in place. What we did after the assessment is we went and we sat with the client and we talked to them. What are your priorities? What does this roadmap look to you? What do you think would be most beneficial to your business today? And going through that, we started by connecting their workforce. They agreed collaboration was a huge thing, especially being a global company. So that started right away. Again, I'll go back to Julian, an internet out of the box with SharePoint. Keeping it out of the box made sure things wouldn't break, and it made it very easy for their team to collaborate back and forth. They could take their teams and integrate it into SharePoint and now have a full internet for collaboration. The second step was really then to go and once they got their users in there using SharePoint, getting used to the platform, was to bring all their data in. I said at the beginning they had already moved some over, but that didn't look at all their pods from around the world. So what we did was help migrate them as a next step in the second year of moving 3 or 4 different departments and migrating those pods into their new central hub of information, which then got everyone being able to collaborate at once. The next step, go over the next year with them, and as you can hear, I'm saying years because some of these were longer implementation processes for them. You can imagine herding cats of different international organizations, different time zones, things along those lines. And it had to go to then securing that data that we had moved and being able to make sure it was governed properly, and not just the data governed. We wanted to make sure their teams were governed. So as they were growing, they weren't just randomly having teams sprawl and creating random teams for every little project they had. It needed to be locked down so that when people were requesting things, that it was done in a manner that it was beneficial to the business. I love a client like this because we really worked with them on the steps they needed to go through, what was important to their business, and did it on their timeline. We recommended, I believe, in our roadmap, and Julian, you would know better than me because you were involved in that roadmap. That roadmap originally was only 2 years to include all of this. I would say we're really just finishing some of this stuff this year, which is a 4-year journey, just based on the speed that they were able to do. But not only while we did that, we also took the time to look back at that roadmap initially and worked with them to do a bit of a journey map with them that, okay, we've accomplished this much and you have to go this much further as we look forward into 2025 and 2026.
I love that. So well, thank you so much, first of all, for sharing that. Again, I feel like there's so many different client examples and exactly what you said. This was 4 years. So this is not, we come in and we take up all your time and do tons of meetings with all the things we've said today. It's making sure, again, we're customizing it to our clients. We're customizing it to the teams and the priorities, finding those destinations. So as a next step for you, I know some of you asked some questions, we'll get back to you through email and respond to your questions. And the last thing before you leave, it's December. People are, trying to hold information at this time of year is not an easy task. So one of the things that we're going to be doing, we're going to be offering a 10% off anybody who signs up for an M365 assessment in January. And so that would be, if you are considering it, a great time to kick off the new year to work with our team. The very first thing we would do as a first step is talk to you. Just figure out, where are you? Is this the right thing? And what would you be focused on? I know we had some questions about email and thinking about their path on the M365. We had some other additional questions about maturity, Power Platform. These are all great questions. So by you just engaging with us and having a conversation, we can help understand and direct you, and then hopefully get you signed up for an assessment in the first quarter of next year. But outside of that, thank you everybody for coming. Connect with us if you have questions, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate your time today. Okay. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.